Please welcome the Senior Editor of Commerce at Recode, Jason Del Rey, for an interview with the President of Pinterest, Tim Kendall.
Thank you.
All right. So stick the journalist in the small chair.
That's right.
It's going to be one of those days. Hey, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. Just quick intro for those who don't know. Recode, business and technology news site based in the US. I cover e-commerce and the payments industries there. If you don't read it, you should starting today. And happy to be here with Tim, the president of Pinterest. So I know a ton of people in the audience know and probably use Pinterest, but I'm sure there's a handful who don't. So I'll give you 30 seconds to tell those in the room who aren't super familiar with the platform what it does.
Yeah, so people use Pinterest to plan their lives, what they're gonna cook for dinner tonight, what they're gonna wear tomorrow, what they might buy at the mall on Saturday, what kind of science project they might wanna do with their kid on Sunday, what kind of home they wanna live in a year, what kind of vacation they wanna go on in 2 years. So it's the everyday, planning the everyday to kind of the milestone events.
And all centered around visual discovery, correct?
Highly visual. I mean, the view is that, you know, the internet and the services on your phone have been great for all of us for a decade plus at giving us what we want when we know how to describe it in words. Amazon, Google are great when I'm ready to go spearfishing and I know the measurements and color and brand of the pants that I'm looking for. But if I just am looking for a certain style that I might not even know how to describe, visual discovery is
Silicon Valley chic,
yeah,
for example.
Right.
Okay.
Silicon Valley cliche, which I think we're both guilty of today.
Yes. So for a long time, Pinterest would get lumped into the social networking category. So some journalists, some brands, some retailers would think of Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest in the same breath. Your company's been on a crusade to tell us all why that's wrong. So maybe you can give a little take on why that matters.
Well, it matters because what we found when we talked to users who hadn't signed up yet for the service or advertisers who hadn't yet engaged with us and decided to try our advertising product, the main reason for both of those constituents for not using Pinterest was that they thought we were another social network. The user said, I don't need another social network, and the advertiser said, I don't need to spend money on another social network. And the reality is that what people do on Pinterest is just fundamentally different than what they do on social networks. On social networks, the use case is, I want to find out what my friends and family are doing, and I want them to find out what I'm doing. Neither of those use cases happen on Pinterest. Pinterest is about planning what you want to do with your life. So it's a tool that helps you. It's very focused on you, the individual, figuring out how you want to live your life on some of the basic dimensions: what to wear, how to look, what you want your house to look like, what kind of food you want to eat.
So the company is about 8 or 9 years old, is that correct?
It's 7 years old.
7 years old.
Yeah.
And now I was surprised to see that I believe more than half of active users, which number in the hundreds of millions, are outside of the US,
yeah,
correct?
200 million users as of a couple weeks ago, and the majority are outside the United States.
And where do you have concentrations of core customer bases or user bases outside of the US, specifically around Europe?
Yeah, so in Europe, France, Germany, UK, Spain, Brazil in South America, and then Japan are kind of the key markets that I would say where we're seeing the most pronounced growth. We have teams there that are focused on creating very localized, personalized experience for our users in those markets. And then in terms of markets in which we're seeing sort of emerging growth, India and South Korea are actually growing particularly fast in the last few months.
So your job as president is running the actual business, which means taking this company that's raised something like $1.5 billion in venture capital and actually making money, which is kind of a crazy thing for a tech startup. And
Yeah.
so the business is much more mature in the US right now, and it's an advertising business. What have been the challenges to sort of adoption of your business model in Europe and broadly across the globe outside of the US?
Well, I think that let's take advertising and put it aside for a second. I mean, before you can have an advertising business, you have to have users, and they have to be spending time on your service and using it for what the service is for, which is in our case kind of planning. And if you rewind 2 or 3 years ago, we had some adoption outside the U.S., but the predominant number of users were inside the U.S. And so we embarked on a very focused effort to really get the product localized in the markets where we really wanted to see growth, where we thought from a cultural perspective the product would really resonate. And so we did sort of the basic blocking and tackling that you do when you try to get a service to work. So we made it faster. So you speed up the service by working with network providers in the market, by optimizing the code on the app, on the phone, so it works faster in the markets where you want it to work. We put people on the ground to help us pull in the right local publishers and influencers to really seed the market and make the experience to the pinner feel like, oh, this is great. This feels like a service that was built in France. Even though in that experience, they might be a combination. We find that users love global content, but also want local content. They want sort of a blend. And then the final thing is we really focused on comprehension, really trying to put ourselves in the seat of a brand new person who'd not heard of the service, who'd not signed up for the service. What are the things and the concepts maybe that people might not understand, particularly if they're outside the U.S. And so one of the biggest levers that we pulled, which doesn't seem that big because it seems somewhat small, is that we changed the button that helps you save content to a board on Pinterest, the pin it button. We changed it from pin to say save. And that actually increased activation meaningfully outside the United States. And we were surprised. We also made that change inside the United States, and it increased comprehension of new users inside the United States. It was more effective than the button saying.
So we were doing it all wrong all along.
Yeah. Someone jokes, we should just rename the company Save Trist and then just call it a day, and everyone will understand what we do, and I won't have to come to these conferences and explain it.
So you're talking about the very much sounds like table stakes
things
of parts of localization. What comes next with your push internationally?
Well, I think, when we got started in those markets, we really focused on embarking on building long-term relationships with the publishers in those countries, the influencers in those countries, and the brands in those countries. Because for Pinterest to work, even before there's advertising, right, there has to be a critical mass of content from businesses. It's sort of interesting. Like if you take that content away, the service just breaks. It just doesn't work.
So it's not, I mean, I have in my mind this idea that Pinterest is user generated, but something like 3/4 of content is from
vast
businesses?
Majority of content is from businesses.
Okay.
There's very little user generated content on the service. And that's what I mean in that if you don't have retailers and publishers and other businesses saying, hey, Pinterest, take my content and help consumers discover me, the service doesn't work. It's a marketplace in that sense. And other services obviously are not like that. If the business content left a social network, it's not clear that anyone would necessarily notice or feel the pain. In our case, it would be systemic. So working closely with those companies to start to grow in these markets just on the user side, because you have to create the marketplace, you have to create the interesting business content so that users come on and engage. And the next step will be taking those relationships and educating them and helping them understand how they can use advertising to drive even more value. A lot of these brands and publishers were their number one traffic source, among organic traffic source.
So if I'm a retailer or a brand and I want to advertise on Google or I want to advertise on Amazon, I sort of know what I'm going after. Like, Amazon, if I'm on Amazon and advertising, it's like really low down in the conversion funnel.
Yep.
Google, there's probably some really specific intent being shown by someone typing in. What role does Pinterest play in sort of the customer's journey from first thought of inspiration to
Right.
whatever the action
Right.
may be at the end of that?
I mean, we're early because we're at the planning stage. So what we find is that users come to Pinterest with a general idea of what they're looking for. Maybe they're trying to redecorate their bedroom. Maybe they're planning for the birth of their upcoming kid. And so they're in this mode where they think, I think I need a baby crib. And so they'll search for, we have search and then we have just sort of a recommendation feed on the service. They'll search for baby crib. Distinct from a classic search engine, they won't search for a brand along with that baby crib because they haven't even gotten to that point. They know they need a baby crib. They don't even know who makes baby cribs at that stage. And so it ends up being...
I've had 2 babies and I don't know who makes baby cribs, but sorry.
Yes. Well, it turns out Land of Nod makes baby cribs, and that ends up being, for that company in particular, that use case of people coming to Pinterest who are planning for their first child and looking for all the components that you need to have a kid. That use case of us introducing a brand new customer to that brand is super common on Pinterest. And so what we find when advertisers come to us is that what they find with the classic, sort of usual suspects that they're using, that they're able to drive revenue, they're able to drive return on ad spend. What's missing is that they really want to be able to find new customers. And we sit in a classic spot for that to happen, which is, okay, Jason, we know you want a baby crib, but you don't know who you want it from. Why don't we make some suggestions of brands who sell that product or service?
Got it. And so are you pulling from existing budgets? Like, I think your business, it's been reported your business is now somewhere around $500 million in revenue this year. Where are you getting those ad dollars from? Is it coming from competitors or is this experimental?
So it's coming from a bunch of different places. That kind of makes sense to us. It sort of puzzled us for a while, but now that we know that we're really in that middle of the funnel consideration segment, it makes sense. It's definitionally, if you're in the middle, you'll pull from the top and you'll pull from the bottom. So we're getting paid search from the bottom, retargeted ad dollars from the bottom, brand dollars from the top, and then we're also getting shopper marketing dollars, which are offline dollars that are used for paying retailers for merchandising. Makes sense, right? That would shift online and might shift to a company like Pinterest that is essentially kind of digital merchandising in a service of products.
So a push you started to make in the US, I think a couple years ago now, was actually allowing transactions to take place on your platform. So this would mean not only would I get inspired as a consumer by the
Right.
something.
I could take action.
I can take action.
Yeah.
It seems like there's been some either hesitation or it's not clear where that initiative is going.
Yeah.
Will Pinterest become an e-commerce platform, or are you rethinking that?
So I think about buyable pins as an evolving program that's focused on when you are on Pinterest and you want to shop, we want to give you the quickest way to go buy that product. In some cases, you'll want to just buy it on Pinterest, and that's what buyable pins enables. In some cases, you may want to actually click off of Pinterest and go to the retailer and understand more about that product, understand what other items you might want to buy with that product.
You're saying people actually want extra clicks sometimes?
Sometimes they do.
Okay.
And so, what you're going to see over the course of the next 6 to 12 months is sort of our efforts in shopping continue to evolve. So we've got a new product that we recently announced called Shop the Look that essentially allows you, it really captures what we're focused on trying to do, which is trying to take Jason from the moment of inspiration, the moment he sees that model in an outfit and he loves the shoes that model is wearing. We want to take that moment of inspiration where you're sort of energized to take action and make it really easy for you to click on those shoes, find out what product exactly they are, and then go to the retailer and buy them. And so we'll start to combine the efforts in Shop the Look and buyable pins and sort of make all of that essentially focused on our mission, which is help Jason discover stuff, and when he wants to do it, which could be buy it.
Okay, so e-commerce transactions have a future on the platform.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when I hear evolving from someone leading a business, I often think this is like you're talking about evolving your way like out of doing.
Yeah. No, I mean I think that look, we continue to support purchases on Pinterest and purchases off Pinterest, and we find that users want both. And so both of those use cases will continue to be supported.
So another place where you're investing heavily is the idea of visual search.
Yep.
So maybe I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but I know a photo that sort of speaks to me, and I want to find more things like that.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about the efforts there?
Yeah. So, look, I mean, I think that shopping, especially when you don't know what you're looking for, is highly visual. And so we've invested heavily in kind of the underlying technology that makes discovery possible based on kind of visual attributes in the pins that are on Pinterest. So a couple things on that. One, we launched a product about 9 months ago called Lens that allows you to essentially take your camera, and you can either grab a picture from your camera roll, or you can point your camera at this arrangement, for instance, beautiful, and learn sort of where you might, what flowers are these, and where might you find those flowers, that kind of thing. People use it for figuring out what to wear. So I might lens my shoes to get a picture of a bunch of different folks wearing these shoes and see what sort of pants they wear the shoes with. So there's that effort. There's also an effort where people can tap on a pin when they're browsing their home feed and then see more pins that are like that pin. And that uses our visual discovery technology to sort of look at that pin with computers, understand all the different attributes, and then go out into our database of 100 billion pins and retrieve the ones that are the most relevant. And then I'll just add a third thing, which is we're now integrated into every Samsung S8. So their flagship device, and so we're integrated in two ways. One, we're integrated into their camera, their native camera app. You can sort of have two choices when you're in their native camera app. You can take a picture, or you can initiate a Pinterest visual search, much like Lens. And then the second thing is that if you're in their browser, the Samsung browser, and you see an image that you want to know more about, you can long press that image, and it generates a Pinterest search.
So is this a defense against something like Google image search, or how should I be thinking about how critical this is to your success?
I think it's fundamental to if you want to provide the service that helps people discover things, and we do feel like we want to do for discovery what Google did for search, you fundamentally have to be at the forefront of innovation in computer vision, in visual discovery. And so these are all sort of the component use cases that sit on top of the technology. And we don't know exactly what's going to take off and what isn't, but we fundamentally believe that the future of discovery and looking for things on the phone is going to be highly visual. We'll probably eventually leverage the camera, may leverage the camera roll, and we'll probably be deeply embedded into the browser and into applications as well.
So you mentioned Google search. One thing, it's been interesting in the search world is when you look at Google, it's taken a horizontal approach, trying to be sort of everyone to every searcher.
Yep.
You see, at least in the US, Amazon start to carve off product search and really become a place where people are starting their product search. When I look at Pinterest, it's another horizontal approach.
Correct.
And I wonder if you see risks in that approach. In the U.S., again, there's, and I think starting to go global, there's a company called Houzz, Houzz, which is taking home decor, home design, and sort of drilling down deep in discovery there vertically. What is the advantage to your horizontal approach, and do you have to be careful in certain areas with competitors?
I mean, I think you always have to be just mindful of competition everywhere. You got to look at what the incumbents are doing, and you got to watch startups. And we do keep a close eye on the folks that are working in verticals where we have strength and try to understand what they're doing and how they're servicing their customers.
Do you lean into certain verticals in
We're
certain geographies?
particularly strong in food, home, style, and apparel. Sorry, style and food, home, style, and beauty. So those four, and we do lean heavily into those. And there's some, I mean, to answer your question, why wouldn't you just go into one vertical and why does breadth win? There are common sort of technology use cases across each of those. For instance, I'll give you a specific example. A recipe is a image of the thing that you're going to cook, a bunch of ingredients, and then instructions for how to do it. A DIY project structurally is the same, right? It's the project, it's the materials that you need, and then it's instructions for how to do it. And so there are ways that you can take technology and products that you build for one vertical and apply them to the next.
Got it. Well, I think we're all out of time. I could keep going, but they're going to kick
Great.
us off. All right.
All right.
Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Tim.
thank you.